Like and subscribe to PalsFundamentals on YouTube for more videos like this. Sources linked below. Welcome to this regional news report. We're looking at some recent developments across the North Atlantic today.
That's right. We're basing this strictly on the stack of sources you've shared with us.
And just to be clear up front, our goal here is simply to walk you through what those sources are highlighting. We're reporting the information. Absolutely no opinions or speculation from our end.
Exactly. Think of us as guides through these reports from Greenland, Iceland, Scotland, and France. Purely the facts presented in your materials.
Okay, let's get started then. Greenland first. Your sources point to a few key things there.
Yeah, first up is a pretty significant EU project. It's about extracting critical raw materials outside the EU itself.
And Greenland's involved?
Directly. Specifically graphite in Greenland. It's reportedly one of, I think, 13 projects like this globally.
Huh. And the aim is boosting EU competitiveness, right? Less reliance on other big players.
Precisely. The sources mentioned a hefty investment figure needed 5.5 billion euros.
Or 41 billion Danish krone, yeah. Focused on materials for, electric cars, batteries, that kind of thing.
And there's a quote from EU Vice President Stéphane Séjourné emphasizing securing these supply chains. It's interesting, Greenland works closely with the EU, even though they aren't a member. They even have an EU office in Nuuk now.
Seems like there's some political backing in the EU, too. Willy Sevendal from SF, the Greens group, reportedly sees it helping Greenland's economy.
And Stein Boss from the moderates apparently welcomed it, too, especially since Greenland turned down other mining bids before.
Okay, shifting gears a bit within Greenland, there's news on landslide assessments.
Yes, up in North Greenland, places called Umiamaku Nunat and Kagurlorsuk.
And the verdict?
Well, the situational assessment says no immediate danger of big landslides or dangerous waves hitting inhabited areas. So that's reassuring.
Good, but not a total all clear.
No, not quite. The monitored areas, they're still showing some movement, especially when it gets above freezing. So the advice is still, be cautious near marked zones or if you're sailing nearby.
Got it. Then there's the political side, the Danish parliament discussing realm unity.
Right. Danish PM Mette Frederiksen apparently praised Greenland's strength against sort of external pressures. She also mentioned being ready to invest more, maybe even review the self-governance law if Greenland wants.
And part of that debate was about modernizing things, like could Greenland handle its own foreign policy?
Exactly. That came up. Naalakkersuisak Vivian Madsfeldt reportedly wants Greenland to control that agenda more directly.
But concerns were raised, too, something about healthcare.
Yeah, Aja Chemnitz from IA, the Independence Party. She flagged staffing issues and a possible 1 billion DKK annual shortfall in healthcare funding.
Suggesting Denmark might need to step up its contribution there.
That seems to be the implication. And one last point on Greenland. Uncertainty over pensions.
The Democratic Party's pledge to scrap mandatory pension savings.
That's the one. The party chair, Jens Frederik Nielsen, who's now head of Naalakkersuisut, was clearly against abolition before.
So what's the official line now?
Naalakkersuisut mentioned a coalition agreement for a new pension reform deal by 2026, based on expert advice. But crucially, the sources say it's unclear if mandatory savings will actually be part of that reform or not.
Which led to some criticism.
From Pele Broberg of Nalarek, yeah. He basically said the solution, getting rid of mandatory saving, is already obvious, so why have a working group? He suggested it's being driven by officials.
Okay, let's hop over to Iceland. Financial stability seems to be a theme.
Definitely. The Central Bank's committee is pushing again for a domestic offline payment system.
As a backup plan.
Exactly. Seen as necessary and urgent, specifically if those undersea communication cables get disrupted. Even though, the banks themselves are apparently strong.
Interesting. And there's also debate about Iceland's ties to Europe.
Yes, a former MP, Arni Shore Sigurðsson, argued for considering a full step towards Europe.
But not just for economic reasons.
No, his argument, according to the sources, was more about safeguarding democracy, human rights, security, especially given current global instability. Less about the usual fish and sovereignty points.
And related to that, there's money set aside for a public debate.
Right, 25 million ISK in the draft budget. It's for a platform to discuss the pros and cons of EU membership, looking ahead to a possible 2027 referendum.
The idea being just to get information out there.
Yeah, the foreign minister said the goal is public access to info, and any organization, whatever their view, can apply for funding support.
Now, this next one sounds quite specific. Icelandic versus Norwegian mackerel.
Yeah, it's fascinating. A Norwegian economist, Trond Bjorndal, found that even though it's the same species, they're basically completely different products.
How so?
It's all about quality and use, linked to when and how they're caught. The Norwegian stuff is caught autumn-winter, landed fast, high quality for people to eat.
Okay.
Icelandic mackerel, caught July-August, apparently has higher stomach content, lower fat. He mostly ends up as meal and oil, lower quality.
So comparing their prices, like for setting fishing fees based on Norwegian prices.
Bjorn Dole argues it's just not justified. They're different markets, different products. Really interesting detail there.
Definitely. Okay, let's cross over to Shetland. What's the news from there?
First, an environmental issue. NatureScot, that's the nature agency, objected to a salmon farm expansion.
Scottish Sea Farms at Fish Home in Yell Sound.
That's the one. The big concern is the potential impact on important sites, specifically disturbing red-throated divers in a special protection area.
Were there other concerns?
Yeah, things like nutrients, chemicals, potential effects on seals, otters, gannets too, though apparently there were plans to mitigate those. But the diver issue seems to have led the council to pause the application for now.
Okay, and something about museum storage.
Right, the current museum's full up. So the plan is to use part of the UHI Shetland campus buildings in Lerwick to store thousands of artifacts.
Makes sense. But it depends on the college's own moving plans.
Seems so, yeah. It followed an options review.
And on the council front, some criticism about project delays.
Yes. Councillor Dennis Leask reportedly claimed major projects like the Fair Isle Ferry, a road at Cullevo, island connectivity are stuck.
Blaming procurement issues.
Poor procurement and departments blaming each other, basically. He called for senior management to step in. The director apparently defended the staff, pointing to procurement challenges like having to retender that Cullevo Road job.
All right, but there's some good news from Shetland, too. Tourism.
Yeah, visitor numbers are up over 10% in 5 years. And interestingly, over half said they were inspired to visit by things they saw on screen, films, TV, even books.
That's quite an impact. And they're spending money.
Oh, yeah. 50 million bound in 2024, and that's excluding cruise passengers. Plus, satisfaction seems high. 7 out of 10 called it one of their best holidays.
Nice to hear. Okay, finally, a quick mention of France from your sources.
Just a naval visit noted, the French helicopter carrier Mistral, along with a frigate, was in Reykjavik, Iceland on June 4th, 2025.
The Mistral's a pretty capable ship, right? Carries helicopters, troops, vehicles.
Yeah, it's described as a carrier, transport, hospital ship, vehicle storage, even has a well dock for landing craft. Sources note its recent use in places like Lebanon and near Gaza.
And the purpose of the visit?
Part of an annual training and operations mission. The captain apparently highlighted the North Atlantic's key role in European defense within NATO. They even offered public tours.
So quite a range then, from EU resource strategy in Greenland, financial tech and EU debates in Iceland, local environmental and council issues in Shetland, to French naval presence.
It really paints a picture, doesn't it? A diverse snapshot from across the region based on these reports. You see everything from big geopolitical currents down to very local concerns.
It really shows a region dealing with, well, its own unique stuff, but also its place in the wider world.
Absolutely. Balancing local needs, economic ambitions, environmental pressures, and that growing strategic importance.
Makes you wonder, doesn't it? How does this region continue to navigate that balance, maintaining its distinct character, while playing an ever bigger role on the global stage? Something to think about.
Like and subscribe to PalsFundamentals on YouTube for more videos like this. Sources linked below.